We have a lot of breaking news, some of it good, some of it not. So let's get to it.
Number 3.
This fake town hall was in order to film it so they could make it into campaign commercials. They filmed it in Delaware with supporters. Joe Biden's town hall, which was closed to press, was so bad that campaign officials determined that it was not usable.
Accountability is coming, but the story we all knew, most of us knew. Joe Biden was not capable of running the country, even after he won the election. More disturbing revelations in how his inner circle is now mocking those in the press that bought their lie.
Number 2.
When the cops actually came in, he said, "I did this." He said, "Sir, I'm unarmed." He put his hands up. He grabbed a red keffiyeh out of his pocket and started the Free Palestine chants. You know, there's only one solution, Intifada revolution.
Right. Kill everybody. Assassination in D.C. Jews targeted again. And there are 2 diplomats from the Israeli embassy as protests continue to rage at the Ivies, chanting the same thing the assassin did. Detained activists, frozen funds, have this New York University and Columbia and many others scrambling to contain the damage.
Number 1.
We look forward to the Senate's timely consideration of this once-in-a-generation legislation. We stand ready to continue our work together to deliver on the one big, beautiful bill. We're going to send that to his desk. We're going to get it there by Independence Day on July 4th.
Let me just say this. Speaker Johnson has done a phenomenal job, and the guy never wanted to be Speaker. The big, beautiful bill has passed in the House. What does it look like? What are the compromises? Were they met? What would it mean for the economy? How's the market reacting? I'll bring you the latest. Marc Thiessen, there's so many moving parts in this. And of course, we bring in one of our favorite guests, Washington Post columnist, Washington Post columnist as well as former speechwriter for George W. Bush and a fellow at AEI. Marc, from what we know of this bill, it's thousands of pages. I know the president considers it a victory. Do you?
Absolutely. It's a huge victory. I mean, so think about this. Donald Trump brought millions of new voters into the Republican Party by promising to eliminate taxes on tips, by eliminating taxes on overtime, by eliminating taxes on Social Security.
All in.
And it's all in there. And and he delivered it in record time. I can't think of another example where people have received such an immediate return on their investment for voting for a candidate than they have with this bill. And it's not just that. He also campaigned on promising to secure the border and deport illegal migrants. There's money in there for the border wall. There's money in there for more ICE agents and more judges.
$175 billion.
Yeah. So he's delivering on that promise as well. And, it's just a huge, huge achievement. It doesn't mean it was easy to do. You're right what you said about Speaker Johnson. I've never seen a more, I've seen less effective speakers with bigger majorities than Mike Johnson has had. The way he managed the Republican caucus last year, getting things done, and now getting this bill through by one vote. With such a historically narrow majority is a huge, people don't appreciate sometimes, Congress is in low regard with the American people for good reason, but this is legislating at its best. This is herding the cats, making compromises, getting the votes, and achieving not taking your eyes off the prize, which is the larger things that Trump is getting in this bill.
Look, they don't have we know the fraud in Medicaid. We know the bomb that Obamacare put into Medicaid. It was supposed to be state-run for those people, the elderly and the disabled. And now it's able-bodied people. There's going to be a work requirement. That's a compromise. But people are panicked. When you tell people, I got insurance, the next day you don't have insurance, well, who's responsible? That party. It could be devastating politically, even though it might be justified rationally and fiscally. So the president just said, don't touch it. But the one thing that bothers me is if you explain the people that are abusing it, that able-bodied people refusing to work while collecting it, you could, I think most American people would say, that's not okay with me. And that's what Karl Rove said to do. So right now, the work requirements are coming in 2026, and then the push down to check the fraud and abuse twice a year is the compromise, it seems.
Yeah, and so keep also in mind that they have another reconciliation bill that they can pass this year, because they didn't pass a budget last year. So theoretically, he could do 2 reconciliation bills. So let's get this bill over the hump, and then see if we can't return and address some of the things that were too difficult to get done. They could do another one, and then they get a third one next year, and they can use that to pass the DOJ recommendations, streamline government. I mean, imagine if they pass 3 reconciliation bills with major tax cuts, with Medicaid reform, with DOGE recommendations, and also Trump gets a bunch of trade deals. I mean, the economy is going to get supercharged. His poll numbers are going to get supercharged. He's on his way. He's on his way.
So let's talk about the assassination last night of 2 diplomats in Washington, D.C. We had an eyewitness. The guy gave himself up. He said, I did it. He was proud of it. And as I said on television, it reminds me of October 7th. These people were so proud of the massacre, the putting babies in ovens, the chopping off of heads, the torture of women, the assassination of dads in front of their families, the taking of hostages. Proud of it. Here's what Katie Kalischer, a Jewish woman who was at the event, said. Cut 23.
He wasn't calm. He looked very scared, but I thought it was because he had just witnessed a murder. I didn't think for a second he was actually the murderer. I feel very lucky to be alive. And I feel extremely sad for the victims, their families. It could have been me.
Could have been, and they were about to get married.
It's just horrible. But, I would say to every college student who's been protesting and participating in these campus protests, this is what globalize the Intifada means. It means bring the Intifada here, right? That's what they're chanting on these idiots. Don't even know what the hell they're saying. They don't know what river, what sea. They don't know. They're just swept up in these protests. When they chant globalize the Intifada, that means kill Jews here in America too. And that's exactly what's happening. And what's ironic is that this was a meeting of a group of sort of left-leaning Jews who want to help the Palestinian people. And this is how the pro-Hamas faction reacts to that. They go and massacre these people who were meeting to raise money to help Palestinians. Hamas is a terror network. It's got supporters here in the United States, and if you think that the Trump administration isn't going to double down now on pulling these student visas and deporting some of these people who've come into this country to stir up this kind of violence, there's a direct line that goes from Harvard to Columbia to Washington, D.C., and this murder yesterday. So radicalization that's happening, it started in those college campuses and has spread, and now we've got a beautiful young couple who was about to get engaged and get married and start their lives, and their lives have been ended. It's just absolutely horrific.
So Claire Shipman, over the weekend, had Columbia University had a graduation. She is the acting former anchor, the interim Columbia president, and we know Mahmoud Khalil, who's the same age of the assassin, 30 years old. Don't look at him as some student. He graduated, living on campus. You figure that out. He's being detained now, and hopefully his visa revoked, but someone's paying his legal fees to keep him around. Here's what Claire Shipman said. She had him not apologizing for anti-Semitism, but listen to her theme, cut 30.
We firmly believe that our international students have the same rights to freedom of speech as everyone else, and they should not be targeted by the government for exercising that right. And let me also say that I know many in our community today are mourning the absence of our graduate, Mahmoud Khalil.
Do you want to throw up in your mouth?
Yeah, I mean, so now replace Jews with black people and say the same thing. I dare you. If there were people chanting for the death of black people on her campus, white supremacists marching to massacre black people in this country, saying that black people should be thrown out of this country from sea to shining sea, America will be free of Africans. Would she be standing there and saying that?
Of course not.
It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. These people their moral compass is so broken and so bankrupt. And I quite frankly, one of the things I'm hoping stayed in the bill, I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, is J.D. Vance had a bill to tax the endowments of these rich Ivy League universities. Right now, they only pay like 3% tax on their endowments. He wanted to tax it at 34%. I think we should tax the hell out of their endowments and use that money to pay for those tax cuts for working class Americans, and let Harvard and Columbia and these morally bankrupt schools start funding tax cuts for working Americans.
So, Marc, let's just change gears and talk about Ukraine. Last night they had a major drone attack at a missile facility in Russia. That's good news. But for the most part, Vladimir Putin is supposed to come back to Trump with his parameters for a peace deal. We already know it. He wants basically elections where his guy wins. They can't only have nothing but a police force, no military. They're going to take areas they haven't even won over yet, that they haven't stolen. They're not even in areas. They want all the Donbass. So we're not going to agree to that. Ukrainians not going to agree to that. What do you think Putin comes back with?
You know, Putin is kind of in a corner right now because he knows that the second he says no and walks away, that Trump is going to impose massive sanctions on his energy industry. Because, you know, one of the things I love about Donald Trump is that this is a president who does what he says, right? Dozens of presidents said, I'm going to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Only Trump did it. Barack Obama said he's going to draw a red line on the use of chemical weapons and bomb the Syrian regime if they use chemical weapons on his people. It took Donald Trump to deliver on that red line. Like, he has said that if Putin walks away and is the obstacle to peace, he's going to crush his economy with secondary tariffs on oil, which means you can trade with Russia or you can trade with America, but you can't trade with both. And he's also said that he's going to arm the Ukrainians and increase the military support for Ukraine. So, you know, what Putin is trying to do is tap him along, avoid saying yes, but also avoid saying no. And at some point, he runs out of road. It's going to be he's going to have to make a decision, and I think Trump's going to deliver on what he promised.
I hope so, because you can't blame Zelensky anymore. Basically, no. There's your metals deal, and you want a peace agreement. I'll even go. I'll go to Turkey. And Putin called it, and he doesn't show up. Now, on Israel, the story yesterday is Israel's getting impatient. They just want to go and finish the job in Iran. Do you think they should wait?
Yeah, they have to wait a little bit. Look, Donald Trump is trying to give these regimes every possible chance to do these things peacefully and to do an agreement. The same thing with Russia, same thing with Iran. The Iranian regime has never been weaker. They've lost all their terrorist proxies. The Houthis have been pummeled. The Hamas has been all three Sinwar brothers are dead. The Hezbollah leadership has been destroyed. Their ally in Syria, their leader is meeting with Trump in Saudi Arabia and has turned away from terror. So they've lost their terror pipeline through Syria into Lebanon and Gaza and the West Bank. They've lost their air defenses. They've lost their ballistic missile capability. Mm-hmm. They're strategically naked, and so this is a moment for Trump to press the advantage and give them a stark choice. You either completely disarm, or we take it out for you. And I give him some leeway to take some time to let the Iranians give a final answer. But I believe that he'll again. The Israelis are going to, if the answer is no, Israel's not going to sit back and do nothing.
Lastly, Jake Tapper writes a book looking to cash in on his irresponsible way he handled and attacked people that brought up how inept Joe Biden's administration was. And now he's trying to make money off it. And sadly, I think he will. On an Enemy Network morning show, he says this, cut 12.
It's absolutely a great question for the sources in the book, and many of them expressed regret that they hadn't come forward until Election Day. The bottom line is, reason that Biden, his wife, his son, Donald and Ricchetti, and others convinced themselves that what they were doing was in the best interest of the country was, one, they thought only Joe Biden could defeat Donald Trump. They were convinced of that. Two, they thought that Donald Trump posed an existential threat to the republic. Right. And if you think that those are the stakes, you can justify almost anything.
Oh, you're nuts. Number one, he can't beat Donald Trump. No polls were showing that. And this guy, though, he was a total freak that he won because he didn't have to campaign. That is the most ridiculous rationalization.
Well, that's his excuse for doing what he did. I mean, let's keep in mind, Jake Tapper is, he said, well, if people had come forward with these stories, I would have reported them. That's not how investigative journalism works. You dig, and you know who did dig was Annie Linsky and Siobhan Hughes at the Wall Street Journal. And Tapper, when he reported on their story, he of course, this is the Wall Street Journal is owned by Rupert Murdoch and News Corp, the same people who run Fox News, questioning their credibility. He for 5 years he dismissed the idea that Biden's cognitive decline was a real thing. He called it Russian disinformation. He said that people were making fun of his stutter. He said that it's not. Yes. He's nothing like they portray him on Fox News. And now everybody knows that was a lie. He was the worst offender in the cover-up. And for him to turn around now and suddenly become the intrepid reporter who's digging up all these great stories, he was part of the cover-up. He's trying to make a buck off of it. It's the most brazen. I would have respected this book if it was a mea culpa. If he had said, you know what? I should have dug deeper. I was wrong. I allowed myself to be misled, and I made a mistake. I'm sorry, America. Then maybe I would forgive the book. But the idea that he's now blameless in this whole thing is just absolute preposterous. And this is why nobody trusts the damn media.
No.
Nobody
CNN.
believes these people because they lie to us over and over again, from the Russia collusion conspiracy theory to the Hunter Biden laptop to this. Gotcha. Lie after lie after lie.
Marc, I took you into overtime again, but you're 100% right. But please don't include Fox in that because we said the same story with the laptop, with the Russia hoax, and with this. I think people appreciate it. Here we are back. Mike Sarraille is here, Navy SEAL officer, now retired, host of the brand new Fox series called The Unsung of Arlington. Mike, great to see you.
Good to see you, too. And congratulations. Daughter graduated her master's yesterday.
Yeah, I got 3 graduating in 3 weeks. I got my son just graduated law school. He's going right for the bar, so he's still in New Orleans. Of course, it was great to see the prisoners get out, try to greet him. And then my other daughter got a graduate degree from an education. She got a teaching job, which is awesome. And then my other one graduates in 2 more weeks. And then we see what's next for her.
That's what we call an underperforming family. You should be ashamed.
Yeah, at least the education is there. So, Mike, before we do anything, this is what we woke up to today. I was going to be in the USS New York and have the pageantry with the band around. And the big, beautiful bill, okay, it passed. That's news. But the other thing, we get up with an assassination in Washington, D.C. of 2 diplomats. A couple was going to be married in weeks, gunned down because they're Jewish, gunned down inside a Jewish center at an event, gunned down by a guy who chants Free Palestine. Oh, does that sound familiar? Exactly like we're here in these college campuses. So what do you say to that? How much time have you spent in Washington? You think those streets are relatively safe where they got shot?
Well, that's what we call a soft target. So the anti-Semitism, and we've talked about this before, is just, it's shocking to me. But from what I've heard, and I know this happened this morning, the individual went to the University of Chicago. It's the radicalization going on within our universities. This has to stop. And I know Trump is making strides by cutting federal funding to these universities, but there's got to be accountability.
They're burning their diplomas. Do you believe this? Burning your diplomas. And the acting director saluted Mahmoud Khalil, who's being financed by Hamas and Iran. I mean, everything's upside down.
Trump said it in a press conference. He was talking about something else, but this nonsense has got to stop. It's almost like Reagan putting the foot down with the professors from Berkeley back in the day. Is that these professors, these leaders of university, they know better. They know better. And there's again, it comes back to accountability. And sometimes for these young individuals, you've got to tell them no.
Well, you know the mindset of killers. I want you to hear what this eyewitness said. They came after the killer shoots 2 innocent people, unarmed, walking hand in hand. Katie Kalisher walks up and sees this guy, and he looks relatively rattled. Cut 23.
He wasn't calm. He looked very scared, but I thought it was because he had just witnessed a murder. I didn't think for a second he was actually the murderer. I feel very lucky to be alive. And I feel extremely sad for the victims, their families. It could have been me.
And then the cops come over and they arrest him, and he says, it was me. He goes, yeah, take me, Free Palestine. He's proud of it. Do you understand? Did you come up with that mindset in Afghanistan, Iraq, proud of killing people?
No. That is a byproduct of war. Never took pleasure in having to kill any human being.
But people you came up with, came up on maybe.
Oh, deprived. The true definition of savagery. And to prey on the innocent, to target these 2 Israeli staffers is just a deprived mind. And this guy's going to get what he deserves. And in my heartfelt condolences to the family of those two.
So here we are, Memorial Day. Perfect time for your series, The Unsung of Arlington. First off, the concept. Give those people that gave so much for the country that are buried in Arlington their moment in the sun. Or another moment.
Another moment. This day, Memorial Day, to me, it's not a celebration. It's a headstone.
Yeah.
It is a day of remembrance for those who gave their tomorrow for our today. And I think Memorial Day we've become disconnected with the meaning of it. For a lot of people, it's the beginning of summer. It's beach chairs and barbecues, and I understand that, and we want them to have fun. But we've got to take a moment to remember the long line of those that have given their lives for this nation. And these stories of these 5 individuals that we focus on in the Unsung of Arlington, this series impacted me. I didn't realize how much it was going to impact me. And to dive into their stories and to learn just the amazing principles by which they lived their lives and the impact they had, we as Americans need to dive into that history. We need to remember. And again, there are lessons to be learned from each of these individuals.
All right. So here's one. And by the way, a great thing to do if you do want to think about the holiday and not just think about barbecues, start it on Fox Nation by watching one of these stories. Here's one. This is John Glenn, cut 39.
As one of the first 7 Mercury astronauts, John Glenn was part of a cadre of Americans who became renowned heroes across the country.
John Glenn was the oldest of the 7 astronauts selected for the Mercury program. At 40, he was the old man of the group.
In 1962, it was his time for his mission, and he became the first person from the United States to orbit the Earth.
So, and he had a military background too. Right?
And we know John Glenn as an astronaut. What we lose sight of is he was a combat warrior. 149 combat missions between World War II and Korea.
Wow.
And, he was a Marine to the core. He went back into space at 77. The man, and he's, I wouldn't say he's relatively unsung. He's well known, but his life was remarkable. And I think what we learned from that is service extends beyond the uniform. He continued to serve his country. He ran for Senate or office. Remarkable human being. And he basically showed us, he proved that, the possible or the impossible is possible by orbiting the Earth.
Here's a little of a guy that's another side of Ronald Reagan, cut 38.
The sight before us is that of a strong and good nation that stands in silence and remembers those who were loved and who in return loved their countrymen enough to die for them. Each died for a cause they considered more important than his own life. They volunteered to defend values for which men have always been willing to die if need be. As we honor their memory today, let us pledge that their lives, their sacrifices...
You realize, too, how great... He gets better when you listen to him, right?
So I am a big Reaganite. And what he's trying to say here is these people believed in something greater than themselves. And what they believed is in us, the potential of what we can become. There is a quote that is well known from Reagan, and it goes like this: those who say we're in a time where there are no heroes, they simply don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to a fraction of the cost that's been paid for freedom.
Well said. The Unsung of Arlington, now on Fox Nation?
Now on Fox Nation.
Awesome. And Mike Sarraille brings it all to life. A natural on camera because he's got a great story to tell. Mike, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. Keep it here, Brian Kilmeade Show. But let's bring in Karl Rove now, former Deputy Chief of Staff, Senior Advisor to Bush, Wall Street Journal columnist, Fox News contributor. Karl, your reaction, first off, to the blatant, bloody anti-Semitism that we woke up to.
My heart breaks. The two wonderful, apparently well-liked young people who are getting ready to get engaged and be married and, attending a reception for young people active in the diplomatic community, and to be slaughtered in front of the Jewish Museum is just by a person who apparently is a Palestinian, pro-Palestinian activist, is an act of evil, and it breaks my heart.
Well, the other thing is, it looks like he's from the University of Chicago, another left-wing but well-respected school. We'll find out details of him. I want you to hear what an eyewitness said. We got a few of them, but here's one, cut 19.
When the cops actually came in, he said, I did this. He said, sir, I'm unarmed. He put his hands up. He grabbed a red keffiyeh out of his pocket and started the Free Palestine chants. There's only one solution, Intifada revolution. And he was being dragged out of the building as he was yelling Free Palestine. And he kept yelling Free Palestine.
And he'll spend the rest of his life in jail and hopefully have a horrific time of it. So that's the mindset. But, without the shooting, that is very similar to the extreme behavior we've been seeing in Columbia, NYU, City College, right here in Manhattan, Harvard University. Did you hear about the commencement addresses over the weekend at Columbia, where they were burning diplomas and the signs and Claire Shipman's comments?
Yep. Look, some of our great institutions are broken. Some of our great universities, Ivy universities, are broken. It's happening elsewhere. University of Texas, we had a great president who took the right action when this all began. But our local prosecutor here in Austin, the state troopers and the University of Texas police arrested 55 violent people. And the local prosecutor, who got elected with $1 million from George Soros, refused to prosecute them. And these were people who literally declared their object was to shut down the University of Texas campus by violence if necessary. And they were found, many of them, with instruments of violence in their possession as they tried to, storm the campus. And our local prosecutor, chalked it up to, freedom of speech. Well, the freedom to speak does not include the freedom to intimidate or to engage in violence. And you'll notice we don't have any condemnations from highly visible leaders of the pro-Palestinian movement in the United States on that act last night. I want the head of some of these groups so-called groups representing the opinion of people with a Middle Eastern heritage to be out there denouncing this evil. But we're not going to hear that, are we?
No, Ilhan Omar walked away from cameras when asked to condemn the act. So let's take a bigger picture. We heard rumors that a very impatient Prime Minister Netanyahu wants to just finish the job in Iran and was pushed back by this administration, who are going to have another round of talks. Karl, what's the best move going forward?
Well, the best move is to be very firm in the view that Iran has to give up its enrichment program. No ifs, ands, or buts. And our special negotiator, who does not have a background in diplomacy, got suckered into suggesting that they might be able to have enrichment for domestic nuclear power issues. But, that's the cover that they used to start this whole thing. So we have to be tough. The maximum pressure campaign in the president's first term nearly bankrupted the country and brought them to the edge of abandoning their nuclear ambitions. And then when he was defeated by Biden and Biden came in and negotiated, their economy boomed again, and their enrichment program sped up. And we are weeks or days away from them having nuclear weapons. A terrible calamity. And so right now it's important for the United States to stand firm. The negotiator, Mr. Witkoff, has got to understand that they cannot have an enrichment program, because that is a face-saving way of saying you can have a nuclear weapon on the schedule of your choosing.
I'm sure I don't have to tell you the Grand Ayatollah and the president weighed in and said under no circumstances will they dismantle the enrichment program and stop spinning centrifuges. So it's over there.
They have an opening. They think they have an opening because we suggested that they could enrich for domestic nuclear power.
I think we have walked that back, and it's pretty I think they straightened that out, my hope. So after this, how many more rounds would you give it after Saturday?
Well, we have to trust the diplomats. We have to trust Secretary Rubio. We have to trust the National Security Council, the State Department, our intelligence community, and trying to divine whether or not, their public statements and their private actions and their private views. And we need to figure out what the private actions and private views are so that we can make a determination. Our leaders can make the determination of what the next step is. But we cannot allow the Iranians to have a nuclear weapon, particularly now that they have signed a strategic defense accord with Russia. So, Russia needs every military ally it can garner, And this new agreement presages, in all likelihood, the exchange of Iranian drones for Russian nuclear weapons training and instruction and missile technology.
Big beautiful bill passed. I read your column, said we could do much better on Medicaid by pointing out the abuse in the program. From what you see in this plan, one of which has work requirements starting next year for Medicaid, and I guess they're going to do constant evaluations for qualifications. What do you think of the bill?
Well, look, mine was written about the specific parts that deal with Medicaid because the opposition is going to make that the centerpiece of their attack on this bill. And so we better be prepared to engage on it. And we have a good story to tell.
Yep.
The government admits that over the last 10 years, there have been $580 billion at minimum in inappropriate Medicaid payments. That is to say, money going to people who, by the law, do not deserve to be on the rolls. And I think the Republicans have got some very good pieces in there. One is, if you're able-bodied and poor, you have to work or be looking for work in order to be on Medicaid. This program was not designed for people who are just sort of like indulging themselves and being dependent upon government. It was designed for the truly vulnerable, poor seniors, the disabled, and children in low-income families. So if you're an adult who now has access to Medicaid because of what Joe Biden did and what the Democrats did in the expansion of Obamacare, the Republicans say you got to be working or looking for work, otherwise you ain't going to get on the rolls. Second, there are at least 1.4 million illegal aliens who are receiving Medicaid, according to the Medicaid people themselves. That's a gigantic magnet. Come to the United States and you'll get free health care.
Medicaid,
no Medicaid for illegal aliens. And finally, why they did this is beyond me. But the Democrats said, we don't want states to have the right to frequently check their rolls to find people who are not supposed to be on the rolls.
It's crazy.
So the Republicans said, we're going to make it possible. We're not going to be punitive. The states have a right to regularly review their rolls and find people who are not eligible according to their laws, to the laws of our country. And these three things will save roughly as much as $800 billion over the next decade. That's a lot of money. And that money would otherwise simply be added to the debt. If we ought to go by the book, no freeloaders. You got to work or be looking for work. You cannot get on this if you're a freeloader. You cannot get it if you're an illegal alien. And the states have the right to find people who are stealing money from the rest of us by regularly reviewing their rolls.
We do have $175 billion worth of detention facilities, border wall, everything that revolves around that. That's good. The SALT, which is going to please Republicans who want to win in blue states, is going to be a $40,000 cap with if you make under $500,000, you'll be able to write off your state tax. I know the people of Texas are beside themselves, in Georgia and South Carolina. I get it, but I'm just telling you that that's the wrestling part. That Lawler and company said they can't win unless they got that.
Yeah, well, look, Mike Lawler is my former White House intern. And I contribute to his campaigns, and I have enormous respect and affection for him. I happen to disagree with him on this, but you know what? It's sausage making, and this is a bit of the sausage I don't like, but it was necessary to get it done. Now get it done.
What about this Trump bucks? $1,000 for newborns for the next 4 years. Trump dollars. They have to invest it.
No, look, I'm just, this is too cute by half. And I think call me old-fashioned. The code ought to be simpler, not more complex. The code ought to be emphasizing economic growth so that rising prosperity will lift all boats, and it ought to be reasonably progressive in nature, which it is. 50% of the lowest 50% of income tax filers pay 4% of the income tax burden. So. All this other stuff, a lot of this stuff to me is gimmicks that smack of political, trying to score political points rather than trying to grow the economy and have a simpler, flatter, fairer tax system.
Here's Kevin Hassett on when this passes. This was last night, but he thought it was going to pass. Cut 7.
people know the economic benefits of this bill. I gave a talk at the Republican Study Committee in the House today at lunch, just laying out the economics of what's going to happen. And the bottom line is that this bill is going to lead to probably 3% growth again, just like we promised last time. And if we get 3% growth instead of the 1.8% growth that the CBO is promising, then guess what? That adds $4 trillion in revenue. It makes it so this bill pays for itself. And I think when people see the bill passed, then that's going to create a lot of certainty in markets, and that's going to be very, very helpful tomorrow.
So that's Kevin's view. Your view?
Well, Kevin's a very smart guy, and from his lips to God ears. But yeah, look, that's what we saw this happen in the first term. Remember, this happened in 2017. Yeah. It took until December 22nd to get the bill to the president, but it kicked off a boom. And, a lot of stuff in this bill is not going to add to the boom, in all candor, but the essentials of a lower rates, lower corporate taxes.
Permanent, too.
Permanent, and making us competitive on the world stage and allowing businesses, large and small, to write off their investment in plants and equipment immediately. All of those things are going to add to economic growth. And yes, economic growth under this administration is going to be better than what it was under Joe Biden, as long as we get this bill done and get it done in quick order.
Like little things, like you're just getting rid of the new Green Deal. Sounds perfect, right? Except for the fact that some of these programs are being built in these states. So it could be Texas. And you have people there working, and they got contracts. So they're saying they're going to sunset these contracts on solar, on battery power, on wind power. And I understand that. Let's do a fade on this. And also, these programs could be good, but it just can't be government funded. So that's the point. For example, Ford was told, here's your mandate, go build electric cars. So they go and they open up electric car plants. In comes a new president, goes, I'm not giving that mandate. So Ford says, what am I supposed to be doing now? So I understand from the business perspective, they're just trying to win.
Yeah. Well, in fact, look, one of the most important things that happened that's going to help kick off stronger economic growth is happening in the Senate. Think about this for a second. During the 8 years of the Obama administration, they proposed new rules and regulations through executive orders and departmental rules that added $870 billion in cost to our economy. Now, that's not my number. That's the number of the people who made the rules, who then had to negotiate with the CBO and other oversight in order to agree upon what was the cost-benefit analysis for that rule. So those are the numbers that the bureaucrats came up with that get published with the rule and the regulation in the Federal Registry. So $870 billion of additional cost on the economy. The U.S. Senate is using the Congressional Regulatory Act to overturn one rule promulgated during the Biden years that allowed California to say that by 2035, I think it is, no gas-powered cars can be sold in California. You know what the cost of that one regulation is?
What?
$870 billion.
Okay.
One regulation alone is the total amount of regulatory burden that Barack Obama ladled onto the economy in 8 years. Under Joe Biden, the amount of regulatory burden on our economy is $1.9 trillion in money that's being diverted from productive activity to complying with a government rule or regulation. So getting rid of this is going to have a big impact on the economy, and probably far more important than to the future of our car companies than anything that had to be done with getting rid of the.
And we all know, Karl, we all know they would never be able to get rid of gas cars in California. This idiot just put never. And the thing is, and they're already paying $7 a gallon with all the taxes and fees there. So it's just nuts. And now they're running commercials, move to California. Nice try. Karl Rove, your attention to detail is phenomenal. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.